At 9, I was thrown into the freezing rain like trash. Bruised, broken, and betrayed. My parents thought I'd disappear forever. But years later, I returned, not for love, but for revenge. What I did next left them begging. You won't believe how it ends. My name is Leah Carter, and I want to tell you about the night my life changed forever. I was only 9 years old, but I remember every moment like it happened yesterday. People always think childhood is supposed to be full of laughter, toys, and bedtime stories. Mine was different. Mine was built on silence, fear, and pretending to be someone I wasn't, just to feel wanted. We lived in a huge house in a quiet, wealthy neighborhood in Austin, Texas. From the outside, it looked perfect. White fences, spotless gardens, shiny black cars parked in the driveway. But once you stepped inside, the air got cold. The walls were polished, the furniture untouched, and everything had its place except me. My parents, Victor and Elaine Carter, ran a chain of luxury home decor stores. They were well known in our community, dressed in designer clothes, always smiling for magazine features or charity events. People thought they were kind, generous, and successful, but they didn't see what happened behind closed doors. My parents only valued two things: perfection and appearances. And I was neither. My younger sister, Emily, she was their golden child. 2 years younger than me, but always praised like she was royalty. She played piano without missing a note, never spilled her juice, never forgot her manners. She was delicate and obedient, everything I wasn't. I was clumsy, curious, always asking questions. If I tripped or dropped something, my mother would hiss under her breath, "Why can't you be more like your sister?" I tried, I really did. I practiced smiling in the mirror just the way Emily did. I sat with my back straight, folded my hands, even stopped talking too much. But no matter what I did, it was never enough. There were no bedtime hugs, no kisses on the forehead, only cold stares, sharp words, and pressure, always pressure. My father, Victor, had this way of looking at me like I was a stain he couldn't clean off his shirt. And my mother, Elaine, well, she acted like she didn't even have 2 daughters. Just Emily. I remember the night everything finally broke. It had been storming all day, thunder shaking the windows, rain slapping the glass. I was dusting the living room, something they made me do every evening, even though I was just a kid. And then, it happened. I accidentally knocked over a tall, narrow glass vase standing by the fireplace. I heard it hit the floor before I could even react. The shattering sound was loud, like 100 tiny explosions. I froze. My heart dropped into my stomach. I didn't know what to do. I just stared at the broken pieces scattered across the floor like jagged ice. A few seconds later, my father's footsteps came thundering down the hallway. His face was already red when he saw the vase. I tried to speak, tried to say it was an accident, but I couldn't get a word out. "That vase cost $3,000, he roared. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" I opened my mouth, but then it happened. His hand flew out and slapped me across the face, so hard my ear rang. I stumbled back, tears welling in my eyes. One hand pressed against my burning cheek. "Get out," he said, his voice low and dangerous. I blinked. What? "You heard me," he growled. "Get out of my house." I turned to my mother, standing at the end of the hallway. She had been watching. She didn't say a word. She didn't even blink. "Elaine," I whispered. "Mom." She just turned away. I don't know how long I stood there before I realized he meant it. He wasn't going to change his mind. No one was going to stop him. I grabbed my thin coat from the hallway, slipped on my shoes with trembling hands, and stepped out into the storm. The rain hit me like needles, soaking me within seconds. My skin burned where he had slapped me. My chest felt like it was caving in. I kept walking because I didn't know where else to go. I didn't cry. Not at first. It was like I had no more tears left to give. The streets were empty, just glowing streetlights and puddles reflecting them like mirrors. My legs hurt. My clothes stuck to my body. I was 9 years old and alone in the middle of a storm. I didn't understand why. Why wasn't I enough? Why didn't they love me? I don't know how far I walked or how long I wandered. But eventually, a truck pulled up beside me. The window rolled down, and a familiar voice called out, "Leah?" I turned my head, squinting through the rain. It was Uncle Rob. "Uncle Rob," I whispered. He jumped out of the truck and rushed over. He pulled off his jacket and wrapped it around me. His arms were warm, solid, and for the first time that night, I felt safe. "What are you doing out here?" he asked, kneeling to my level, brushing the wet hair from my face. "Why are you alone?" "They kicked me out," I said. My voice cracked. "Dad hit me. I broke something." He got mad. Uncle Rob didn't say a word for a moment. His jaw clenched, and his eyes darkened. "Get in the truck," he said softly. "You're coming home with me." He drove us through the storm, his hands gripping the steering wheel tighter than I'd ever seen. His small house was warm and messy, full of blankets and the smell of old coffee. It wasn't like my parents' house, but it felt real. It felt like something I'd never had. He didn't ask a lot of questions that night. He just gave me dry clothes, made me a cup of hot cocoa, and told me I could sleep in his guest room for as long as I needed. He said I wasn't going back there. Not unless I wanted to. And I knew I didn't. That night, lying in a warm bed, I listened to the rain outside. I didn't cry. I didn't beg for them to come find me. I just stared at the ceiling, my cheeks still sore, and thought, maybe this is what freedom feels like. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring. I didn't know how I'd explain any of this. But one thing was clear. My old life was gone. And for the first time in years, I was okay with that. Living with Uncle Rob was like waking up from a long nightmare I didn't know I was in. At first, I kept waiting for the rules to start, waiting for him to tell me I wasn't good enough or that I needed to act more like Emily. But he never did. He treated me like I mattered, like I was a person, not a problem. The first week, I barely spoke. I was still scared, still waiting for the floor to crack open and send me right back to that cold, silent house. Uncle Rob gave me space. He didn't push. He just made sure I ate, made sure I had clean clothes, and left a night light on in the hallway in case I got scared. It was the smallest thing, but no one had ever done that for me before. Eventually, I started to come out of that shell. Uncle Rob enrolled me in a new school across town, and for the first time, I walked into a classroom where no one knew me as the disappointment. I wasn't compared to Emily. I wasn't already labeled. I was just Leah. It was hard at first. I was behind in some subjects and nervous all the time, afraid to say the wrong thing or mess up. But slowly, I began to grow. I made a friend named Kayla in 6th grade who sat with me at lunch and let me borrow her colored pens. We laughed about dumb things, made silly drawings, and shared secrets. It was small, but it mattered. Uncle Rob would ask me how school was every day, and he actually listened when I answered. He came to parent-teacher conferences and school plays. Even when I had a tiny role in the background, he cheered like I was the star. I started to feel proud of myself. Not because I was perfect, but because I was trying. Years passed, and I began to understand more about the kind of people my parents really were. Rob told me once, in the calmest voice, "Your mother was always hard. But after she married your father, it got worse." I tried to stay close, but she shut me out. I wasn't going to watch them destroy another life. I think that's when I realized he had saved mine. By the time I turned 16, I knew what I wanted to do with my life. I wanted to help people, kids like me, especially. I started volunteering at a local shelter, helping organize donated clothes and serve meals. It made me feel useful. It made me feel alive. When I was 19, I got accepted into a small community college on a scholarship. I cried when I got the letter. Not because of the school, but because I had made it there on my own. No help from Victor. No fake praise from Elaine. Just me. I started working part-time at a social service center near campus, assisting with youth programs. I sat with kids who had been through things I understood too well: shame, fear, abandonment. I didn't have all the answers, but I listened. Sometimes, that's all someone needs. Then one evening, while I was sorting old journals in a box at Rob's house, my phone buzzed. The screen showed a name I hadn't seen in years: Emily. I froze. I didn't even know she had my number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me tap the screen. Leah? Her voice was quiet, almost nervous. It's me. I didn't say anything for a moment. Hearing her voice felt strange, distant. I found your journals, she continued. The ones you left behind. In the attic. I read them. I sat down slowly. You weren't supposed to. I know. I shouldn't have, she interrupted. But Leah, I had to know the truth. And now I do. The line went silent for a moment and then she whispered. They're doing it to me too. I felt something twist in my chest. What do you mean? They won't let me make any decisions, she said. They told me I can't be a photographer, that it's a waste of talent. Dad's trying to make me work at the stores, and she's trying to set me up with this guy I barely know. Just because he's from a wealthy family. A rush of emotions hit me all at once, shock, anger, even sadness. For years, I thought Emily was their perfect angel. I thought she had everything. But now I realized she had just been their puppet. I don't want to end up like them, she said. I don't want to be cold and bitter. I want to feel free, like you. I swallowed hard. You think I'm free? You are, she said. You got away. There was a long pause before I said, Do you want to leave? She didn't answer right away. But then, softly, Yes. I don't know where to go. I looked around Rob's small living room. He was in the kitchen, humming to himself as he cooked dinner. Come here, I said. We'll figure it out. Emily came 2 days later with one suitcase and her camera. Rob didn't say much, but he nodded when I explained everything. Family helps family, he said, even when the rest of the world turns its back. It was strange at first. Emily and I hadn't been close in years. But slowly, we started talking again. She told me how her parents never praised her real dreams. How they only loved the version of her that followed orders. She had been trapped, just like I had, just in a prettier cage. I could feel something burning inside me. They had thrown me away like I was trash. Now they were trying to do the same thing to her. And suddenly, I wasn't just hurt. I was angry. Not the kind of anger that makes you cry. The kind that makes you act. I knew it was time. Time to show them they couldn't control everything. Time to stop pretending their cruelty was normal. I had lived in silence long enough. That's when the idea of revenge began to grow. Not for myself alone, but for every child who had been made to feel worthless under their roof. And I knew exactly where to start. I didn't want revenge out of spite. It wasn't about getting even anymore. It was about justice for the child I used to be, for Emily, and for the kids I met every day who were stuck in families that only knew control and cruelty. My parents had built their lives on a perfect image, hiding everything rotten behind it. I was done letting them get away with it. It started with the journals. The ones Emily found. I went through them again, page by page, reliving memories I had buried just to survive. I wrote everything in those pages. Names. Dates. What they said. What they did. At the time, I didn't know why I was recording it all, but now I understood. That was my proof. Emily helped. She remembered moments I had forgotten. Together, we created a timeline, every time our parents had mistreated us or used us to boost their reputation. And then Emily said something I didn't expect. You know how Dad always said our stores were spotless? That everything was done by the book? I looked up from the notes. Yeah. Well, she continued, I found something. In his office drawer. He doesn't know I saw. Tax papers. Some of them look fake. That got my attention fast. We went through everything she had saved on her phone. Photos of documents, invoices that didn't line up, and emails between Dad and a man named Brent, who clearly wasn't handling things legally. For years, Victor Carter had been cheating the system, hiding money, avoiding taxes, and paying off inspectors to look the other way. And while he was doing all of that, he had the nerve to act like we were the ones who failed him. It wasn't enough just to know. I wanted people to see the truth. I created a new email account, one that couldn't be traced, and sent copies of the documents to a few local reporters. I didn't say much, just enough to make them curious. You might want to look into Victor Carter of Carter Interiors. His books aren't as clean as they seem. At the same time, I reached out to one of the employees from Dad's stores, someone I remembered from when I was younger. Ms. Geraldine. She had worked the front desk for over 15 years and had always been kind to me, even when my parents weren't. I called her anonymously, just to ask questions. She ended up telling me more than I expected. He treats the staff like they're machines, she said. No overtime pay, constant pressure. He fired 3 people last year for asking about their bonuses. I added that to the list. By the end of that week, 3 different news outlets had received enough dirt to dig deep, and they did. It started with a small article on a local blog. Then it hit the newspaper. Headlines started circling. Austin business tycoon under investigation for tax fraud. Our parents didn't know it was us at first, but we knew it was only a matter of time before they suspected. The phone call came 3 days later. I was at the youth center where I volunteered when my phone lit up. The screen said Mom. I almost didn't answer, but I wanted to hear what lies she'd tell this time. Leah, she said sharply, as if I had just stepped out of the house that morning. I didn't speak. What's going on? Are you involved in this nonsense going around in the media? Still silent. You think you're smart? You think you're hurting us? You're just ruining your own name. That made me laugh. You ruined my name when you left me in a storm with nothing but a coat. She hesitated, then tried a softer tone. It's not too late to come home, Leah. We can fix this. You don't have to throw everything away. I already did, I said. Everything I didn't need. I threw it away the night you slammed that door on me. I hung up. That same evening, Emily and I sat on the porch with Uncle Rob. He was reading the latest headline on his phone. Carter Interiors was now facing a full audit. Business partners were pulling out. Their investors were furious. The empire was shaking, and it was beautiful to watch. You sure this is what you want? Rob asked me gently, putting his phone down. I nodded. They taught me that power is everything. I'm just showing them what it feels like to lose it. Emily leaned her head on my shoulder. We're not doing this just to destroy them. We're doing it to free ourselves. She was right. It wasn't just revenge anymore. It was closure. Around that time, we came up with an idea, something that could give back in a way our parents never did. A center for youth like us. A place where kids facing emotional abuse, rejection, or pressure could just exist without fear of being judged. We called it the Phoenix House because we were rising from ashes, building something new. Rob offered to help us find a space. We used our savings, reached out to contacts from the shelter I worked at, and raised money online. People cared more than we thought. Survivors, donors, even neighbors came forward to support the cause. Every wall we painted, every bed we built, every program we designed, it was like gluing our own broken pieces back together. We weren't victims anymore. We were architects of something better. But I knew the story wasn't over yet. I knew they'd come back. One last time. The call came just 2 days before the Phoenix House was set to open. I was sitting on the floor, surrounded by boxes of books and donated supplies, when my phone rang again. This time it was my father. I didn't want to answer. My heart thudded in my chest, and part of me thought about throwing the phone across the room. But I needed to hear it. I needed to know what he'd say now that everything was falling apart around him. Leah, he said as soon as I picked up. His voice was low, tired. We need to talk. I stayed silent. Look, I know things got complicated, he continued, like we were old business partners with a disagreement instead of a father who abandoned his child in the rain. But this smear campaign, this chaos in the media, it's gone too far. You need to stop. I closed my eyes. I'm not the one who needs to stop, Dad. Maybe if you had told the truth from the start, you wouldn't be in this mess. There was a pause, then a sigh. You're bitter. I get that. But you're not helping yourself either. That center you're starting? It's not going to last. You don't have the money, the experience, the heart. I snapped. Because that's what you never had. And that's the only thing that matters. His voice hardened. We're still your family, Leah. I felt something inside me break, not from pain, but from the final thread of attachment I'd been holding on to. You stopped being my family the night you turned your back on me. The night Mom watched you throw me into the storm and did nothing. I don't care what happens to you now. I'm not your daughter anymore. You'll regret this, he said. No, I whispered. I regret ever wanting your love. Then I hung up. I sat there in the quiet for a moment, the weight of it all finally lifting. That was the last piece. The last conversation. I had nothing left to say to them, and they had nothing left to take from me. The day of the Phoenix House grand opening felt like a dream. The small building we had turned into a safe space was decorated with hand-painted signs from volunteers and fresh flowers in jars. Kids from the neighborhood, local supporters, and people from the shelter came to celebrate with us. Uncle Rob stood beside me, holding a cup of coffee and beaming like a proud father. Emily stood on my other side, her camera around her neck, snapping pictures of every smile, every laugh, every hug. For once, the past didn't feel like a shadow over me. It felt like fuel. I gave a small speech that afternoon. Nothing fancy, just the truth. I was once a girl who thought she had no worth, I said, my voice steady. I was told I was a failure, a mistake, someone who didn't belong. But I was wrong to believe them. Because here, in this place, with these people, I found something real. And if you've ever felt the way I did, I want you to know, you're not alone. And you are never worthless. People clapped, some even wiped away tears. But for me, the biggest moment came later, when a young girl named Tessa, maybe 12 years old, tugged at my sleeve. My mom says I'm too loud and weird, she said softly. She says I ruin everything. I knelt down and looked her in the eyes. You don't ruin anything, Tessa. You just haven't been heard by the right people yet. She smiled a little, and I knew right then we were doing something that mattered. As the sun began to set, casting golden light through the big windows, Emily walked over and handed me a photo she had just printed. It was a picture of the three of us, her, me, and Rob, standing in front of the center, arms around each other. They'd hate this picture, she joked. I laughed. Good. That night, the three of us sat on the porch outside Rob's house. No words, just the hum of the night around us. It was peaceful, whole, a kind of stillness I never thought I'd feel. Emily leaned back and looked at the stars. Do you think they'll ever change? I thought about it for a long time. Then I said, maybe. But I'm not waiting around to find out. I meant it. The scandal didn't go away for Victor and Elaine. Investigations continued. Their stores slowly closed down. Their name, once printed on banners and gift boxes, faded away, just like they had faded from my life. And I didn't need revenge anymore. I had something better. I had freedom. I look back now, not with pain, but with power. The girl who was thrown into the rain became the woman who built a roof for others. And the family I thought I lost, I built a new one. One that chose me. One that stood by me. One that believed in me. This is my story. And I tell it not to reopen old wounds, but to remind anyone listening that the worst night of your life does not have to be the end. Sometimes, it's just the beginning.